The words we use don't just come out of thin air. Well, except dog. No one really knows where dog comes from. But generally, the words we use have a whole history and they help us see how our society formed. And our words for capitalistic and financial things are no different, and especially they help us understand why we came up with these structures of organizing our society and trading with each other. And so today, in relation to this channel being one which looks at the West and our values generally, I'm going to take you through financial words and explain the languages that they come from. Now, because I do things with Welsh, I'll put the Welsh word there. That's the Welsh word for word, gair. But we're looking at commerce and financial words today. This is Benjamin. Let's get into the video. This is the Kish tablet, the earliest surviving writing that we have, probably from around 3300 BCE. This is proto-cuneiform, the type of script from Sumeria. And these tablets begin to proliferate the area. And what these are, it's not language like speaking, it's financial records, exchanges. Our earliest writing itself was an expression of fairness, saying, what I'm going to give you, these barrels of barley, are what I say. Here is a record of it for you. Let us be fair with each other. We don't need to wage war. And then out of this, literary language then blossomed. So first of all, finance. Where does the this in itself come from? Well, it comes into English through Norman French. Finance as well. But it's changed meaning from fine, to pay ransom from, fin, meaning end. I'm sure if you've ever seen the end of a French film, le fin, it's the same root, the end of. But it comes from Latin finis, ending a debt, ad finum, to the end. It's about settling a matter, putting things in order, settling things, tidying up. And in Welsh, cyllid comes from a root like com, together, with lleid. It's very old, that, but it means taking together. So let's go to the next word. Here is the earliest known coin from Athens, or the earliest Athenian coin, from 545-530 BCE or so. This was more efficient than carrying bulky, clay-stamped legal documents. They were on the open sea, trading throughout the Mediterranean, more efficient. And the coins begin to proliferate and develop across the region from this point. Money comes from Old French, monnaie, meaning money. Change as well. Minted coinage. Currency. And this came from the word for mint, moneta, a place for coining money. But this has its root in Roman mythology. Juno Moneta, the goddess of memory, the protectress of funds. And this goddess of memory, Juno Moneta, that ending, her surname, comes from monere, meaning to remind, to instruct you to take something. Money. And Welsh, arian, comes from silver. Let's go to the next word. Budget. What does this actually mean? Budget, French or Old French. It's a diminutive, meaning a small leather bag or wallet for coinage. From Latin bulga, a leather bag, and ultimately from Gaulish, a language quite like Welsh. Bolga, a bag for coins. And in Welsh we have bowl today for stomach or belly. Belly and bowl share that same root, as does bulge. All of these are connected to budget. And in Welsh we tend to use the word for finance for budget. But we also have this word benthyg, to loan, which comes from beneficus, in Latin, a kindness, a favor. The early Roman Republic developed aes signatum, bronze bars. These could be rather light or quite heavy, but they were of standard weights, and this meant that the Roman state and its treasury could be more efficient in the dealings between people. It allowed social cohesion through open finance. What about spending money, not just loaning? This comes from Saxon spendan, to spend, from forspendan, to use up, consume. Ultimately, however, though it's Germanic, it comes from Latin expendere, to weigh out, though it may be from Germanic to consume. So it's about using up what you have. In Welsh, gwario means to lay out your wares, a borrowing, we think, from older Saxon. But if you're not spending, or you cannot spend, you may need to borrow to spend. And this comes from another Saxon word, borgian, to borrow, lend, pledge surety for, ultimately from Germanic borgona, a pledge to take care of. You're guarding it, you're not taking it. Debt. This comes from French again, older French, debt. From medieval Latin, debita. When you have a debit card, that's the same root as this. Something, a thing that you owe, that which is owed, debita. From Latin debitum, what is owed, a duty. From debeo, I owe. Ultimately from dehibeo, that which is away from me, or that which is away from what I have. Next one. In Renaissance Italy, the Medici family rose to power, bankers, establishing the Medici Bank. This bank was at the center of the Florentine Republic. This bank pioneered concepts of credit and debit, as well as tracking deposits and withdrawals. These technological advances made them very wealthy, but it was possible because there were so many different city-states, and they needed, when they weren't fighting, a way to interact that was more open. You give me this, and I will give you that. Is that not fair? As fair as we can make it anyway. You would not expect bank to come from anything other than Latin, considering it really came to us through French, in both cases English and Welsh, and ultimately, not ultimately, but before that through Italian. But the Italians, they were invaded by peoples from the north, the Lombards, a Germanic people, and they came with the idea of a banca, basically a big wide wooden bench that became a counting table that you would meet someone and exchange money over, because it was clear and open, easy to assess what was going on. Fair. And a lot of these words for commercial activities, they come from the sense of fairness in our languages, not just in English. A counter, a bench, and ultimately from West Germanic, benki. Interest. I just need to note, I really like the Welsh word for this, llog, and its meaning probably comes ultimately from Latin locus, mangre, fusing with British, meaning a sacred place where you gain beneficiary things from. Locus kisagredig, a sacred place. So when you place your money in a bank in Welsh, you're placing it in a sacred grove to gain benefit from. Llog, the locus. But in English, it comes from French, or older French, interesse, and this from Latin, inter esse, meaning between being. Literally, you are between two parties, and it signifies your importance. However, we don't know how this switched over into English, connotating the words of advantage and gain. But that's the root of it in any case. Next, the first paper money in Europe was made by Stockholm's Banco. Not surprisingly in Stockholm, in 1661. And this is a saying from the bank. This is proof that you have credit with me and that I will reimburse for this note. It's trusting fellow men. Capital. Now, Karl Marx wrote an endless near rant about capital, das Kapital. But in this whole book that he tirades against the virtues of capitalism, he doesn't seem to understand where the word capital comes from. It comes from Latin capitalis, right? Cap is head, of the head. Caput, a head. And what this was, it was a way of counting worth. When people freely competed with each other and needed a way of measuring each other in society to show that their work was worth something. And so they counted the heads of cattle, the capita. It became eventually capital. And in Welsh it has a similar meaning, cyf meaning together. Alaf is head of cattle, alafoedd, heads of cattle counted as wealth. Because we could not just have a situation where no one knew what things were worth. But if you worked hard and you reared cattle yourself, that was fair, or as fair as we could get it, to each of us. And so the root of capitalism is the fairest system we have ever devised. In terms of the roots of it, in terms of the individual having rights to his or her own worth. And that foundation has been a seed of strength we in the West have watered and nurtured over thousands of years. The very formations of our words signify that we valued equality and rights from the standpoint that we work for our property and that bestows rights upon us then. Those were just a few words, but I hope you can see now that this materialistic, capitalistic situation we find ourselves in today, it's based upon the best thing that we could come up with to ensure equal worth of free men at the time. And it stood the test of time because those roots are deep and they're still shaping who we are, and it is who we are. We'll see you in the next episode. Diolch yn fawr iawn.